visions and voices that the Lord has given me in prayer. It's very vulnerable to share these things, and I honestly would prefer not to, but I do feel called to it. I hope this video will serve as a bit of a bridge for you in entering into the possibility that you don't have to already be a great saint who is a finished product, who is ready for heaven, who's totally holy for God to speak to you. There's a good chance, in fact, I think there's a 100% chance that wherever you are in your spiritual life, God wants to speak to you. Hey, welcome to Called and Caffeinated. I want to have a preamble because I feel like we need to have a conversation. As I've shared on my last video, this is kind of a new frontier for my ministry. Some people are going to think I'm crazy, and I don't have any control over that. Whatever, you can think that if you want. I also realize that some people might feel jealous if they haven't received this kind of communication from the Lord before. It doesn't mean, first of all, that I'm special, because as St. Teresa of Avila says, Jesus spoke to the Pharisees. It's what you do with the communications that God gives you that is important. And second of all, it doesn't mean that God is not speaking to you. God is going to speak to each of us in the ways that He particularly wants to. And He could speak to you. I'm going to be exploring this on my channel. He could be speaking to you in many other ways that aren't these visions or these voices or these more kind of like direct and spectacular kind of ways of speaking. Okay. I don't think I'm more special than anybody else. I think I'm special, but I also think you are. I know you are. Each one of us is so precious and special to God. And if He chooses to not give you these kinds of communications, He still wants to speak to you in a way that you can hear, in a way that speaks to His endless creativity and His provision and His care and His love for you. It might be the case that your faith is stronger than mine. I just shared a video about St. Teresa of Avila's rules for discerning locutions from God. Locutions meaning communications such as visions or voices, and discerning whether or not they come from God, the devil, or your imagination. She gives some really concrete, solid rules, so you can go and watch that video. That was not me speaking in tongues. That was me just trying to clear my head. Oh, okay. I do not have the gift of tongues. That'd be really cool, actually. That'd be cool. Like, that'd be kind of weird, though. I don't know. I know one person who could speak in tongues, and it was kind of weird hearing it. Hey, it's Future Editing Stacy, just popping in here to say that these visions I'm going to share don't have anything to do with God telling me to do something. And if you think you have a vision where God tells you to do something, I would really advise you to watch my video about St. Teresa of Avila's rules for discerning whether a locution is from God. These are just private revelations that have been given to me about my relationship with God and how He sees me. If He's telling you to do something, I think that's an area where we have to be extremely careful. For private revelations like this, where it's just an affirmation of His love and His care, I think those, you can take them much more simply and at face value. I would just encourage you to be really careful and talk to your spiritual director if God tells you to do something in a vision. So let's get into it. If you close your eyes and you imagine like Jesus on the cross, that's kind of what I was imagining. It was all in my mind's eye, and I just put my hand closer to Jesus, and His hand was, pierced with a nail and nailed to the cross. And I put my hand over His hand, and in order to get closer to Him, I had to pierce my hand with the same nail that was piercing His. And that revealed a lot to me. Obviously, the nature of suffering is such that when we want to be closer to the Lord, the more we suffer, the closer we are to the Lord, and that He is going to be with us and closer with us the more we suffer. And that profound vision was so beautiful that when I met my husband, I told him about it. And one year he actually painted it. So it's very beautiful. My husband's a very talented painter. And I've come back to that image often as I have learned how to suffer and that my suffering has increased. I've returned to that vision often. Hebrews 13:5 says, He has said, I will never forsake you or abandon you. Thus we may say with confidence, the Lord is my helper and I will not be afraid. What can anyone do to me? Taking the quickest of all ad breaks here, folks, to just let you know that there's a new candle available on the Catholic All Year Marketplace for sale. It is handmade, 100% beeswax with a crackling wooden wick, and this one has a hidden key pattern. Can you see
It's named after the keys of St. Peter. It's called ex cathedra, which means from the seat of Peter, and you can see on the jar that the dome looks like the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. It is jasmine, lily, and sea salt scented, and I would be honored if you would consider purchasing one either for yourself or for a friend, maybe for an ordination, wedding gift, baby shower. Gosh, the options are endless. You'll find a link in the description below. Thanks.
Healing after my daughter's NICU stay. I am going to throw a video up in the suggestion box or whatever, where if you haven't seen the story, you can go watch it's like a 4-minute video about Honora's journey through the NICU. She had 126 days. The separation and the grief and the trauma was just enormous. And I've been asking the Lord, like, how in the world are you ever going to even begin to heal this? There's so much there. So he has been, and it will always be a work in progress. But one of the visions that really helped me was a year or so after this whole experience started. We'd been home for about 8 months, and I was holding it together, but my daughter continued to suffer. You know, she will have a lifelong disability. She has a feeding tube still. She gets sick for twice as long and 5 times as bad as everybody else in our family. For her, a cold, it's not just a cold. She's like choking on all of the mucus. And so my husband and I have to sit up half the night with her many times so that she doesn't, so she can breathe and like hold her upright. So there's so many things that continue to not be normal and continue to be difficult. And as I was trying to both process all of the grief that had happened to me and all of the trauma that had happened to me, and then also kind of just survive the reality of continuing to be a special needs parent. I was holding it together. We were making it to all the doctor's appointments and the therapy appointments. You know, we were doing okay, but I just felt like I was crumbling on the inside. And I imagined my heart, and I just saw it in front of me, and it was like shaking, but like holding itself together. Like it looked okay from the outside. Anybody who saw me would have been like, wow, like you're dressed, you're wearing makeup, you're like out and about in the world, you're having play dates with people, you're making it to your doctor's appointments, you're crushing this thing, and to other people outside, I looked fine. But I was carrying around these just secret wounds that I didn't even know how to begin to talk about. I'd been to therapy, but there were so many layers there that it was just sometimes still just overwhelming for me. And so as I imagined my heart, it looked normal from the front. But then if you kind of turned it and looked around the side that people couldn't see, there was just this big open wound, just like hurting. And that was how I felt my heart was this wound that could never be healed with a Band-Aid or stitches even, just get this gaping wound, really. And I said to God, like, what are you going to do about this? How can I live like this? I don't even know how to begin to describe how hard all of these experiences were to people. And if I tried, I would wear out their patience very quick, even the most compassionate, sympathetic person. And the Lord kind of just let me like sit there in that realization of the huge gap for a minute. And then he showed me Mary's heart, pierced with 7 swords, Our Lady of Sorrows. And he just said, you remind me so much of my mother's heart, how she has endured so many sorrows, and she continues to, the sorrows of her children. She's with us in all of our sorrow. And so that just dignified the wound, first of all. And then Jesus like reached inside of it and just took out a sword. This sword was going to be the weapon, the exact thing that was going to help me reach other people that found themselves in a similar, overwhelming, traumatic situation. This wound wasn't going to be something that was actually going to weaken me. It was actually going to strengthen me. It was going to be my weapon against the devil. But I am beginning to see now, 3 years later, how the person I was before I went through all of these experiences and became a special needs parent, I wouldn't go back to that person. She was very selfish. Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. There was another moment where I was walking past this beautiful ceramic glazed Sacred Heart that my friend Erin Perry gave me. Shout out to Erin Perry. She's so awesome. She has this ministry where she makes ceramic hearts and she just gives them to people, Sacred Hearts. And she gave me one, which I love, and it's hanging on the wall in my bedroom. It was a very busy day, and I was really struggling because at that point, my little special needs gal, we just couldn't get her to keep any food down. She was throwing up 6 to 8 times a day. So every couple of hours, I was cleaning up vomit off the floor, and I was running to the sink with her, carrying along this IV pole with her, like, food bag attached to it, and just trying to make it to the sink so she could throw up in the sink, barely making it out of my pajamas. And that's how life was for months. And so it was on one of those days when I didn't have time to sit down and pray because my children just needed me constantly. And I would have much preferred to go to church and do a holy hour, but that was not where I was at that time. And I just walked past this ceramic heart that was hanging on my wall, and I just heard the Lord's voice in my head, and it said, I understand it all. I gave you this suffering so that you could understand me better. The last vision I'll share with you had to do with a conversation that my husband and I had. Building a house is stressful. It's a good kind of stressful, but it is stressful. And there's so many thousands of dollars on the line with every big decision that there are a lot of conversations and a lot of relationship work. They say it can be one of the most stressful things on a marriage, I guess, as well as special needs parenting, building a house. So my husband and I had a very stressful conversation, and we had reached this point where I just felt like we could not reconcile our two viewpoints on this particular purchase. And I was just inspired to cry out to Our Lady, Undoer of Knots. I have a statue that I sculpted of Our Lady, and I love it. And I was just looking at this statue and praying to her, and I could see the problem in my mind's eye as like a knot. And it was like so tightly balled up, this knot. And if I could have expressed my emotions around this problem, it would have looked like that ball of string, just like so terse and tightly bound, and lots of strings entering and exiting, and it was so complicated. And I was like, okay, there is a title of Our Lady for this particular problem. What are you going to do with it? And I imagined in my mind this ball of string. And then as I continued to pray, the ball of string just became gold, and it changed in its essence. Instead of the knots and the string being hard and tense, they just relaxed and they became looser, and they started to fall apart, and the whole ball of string fell apart. And the strings didn't come undone. They stayed winding in and out of one another, but the whole thing, instead of being this tense, balled up object, became this beautiful design. If you've ever seen the Book of Kells, I got to see it years ago when I visited Ireland, when I was in Dublin. And the Book of Kells has all of these beautiful Celtic knots in it, and all of the different strands are intertwining and weaving in and out in a very complicated pattern, and they're beautiful. And this ball of string became like one of those Celtic knots. So complex and so beautiful exactly because of its complexity. And I thought that was just wonderful. Like, wow, thank you. Thank you, Mary, Undoer of Knots. Like, you can turn our problems into something that is so beautiful and a testament to God's help and his aid and his provision, particularly because it was so complex and so out of our hands and so difficult for us. The more complex the problem, the more beautiful God's solution to it will be, and the more it will be a testament of his glory. You're wearing 2 different kinds of red. You want my coffee? I'll let you have a little taste. Do you like it? I know, it has mocha creamer in it, so of course you like it. Do you want to say hi? Look, Michael. Say hi. I'm gonna wave. Hi. There you go. Are you so cute? Does mommy love you? Yeah. Are you almost ready for nap time? Yes. Okay. No. Oh, that's a no.